Welcome back to Lap Quilting. Mrs. Elsie Carr from Greensboro, North Carolina is the creator of that quilt, Many Moons Over Many Mountains. I am sitting here in the midst of many mountains, and the idea here is to show you how you can take one block, one pattern, and repeat it in many different smaller projects. The idea is that it becomes instant gratification. You can finish the project in a hurry, and it's not as long as it would take to do a whole quilt. Let's start by looking at the boudoir pillow. This is your 6-inch block repeated 4 times in a rectangular arrangement for a pillow. We don't always have to think of pillows as being square. And then I've put a large ruffle around the top for a more feminine look in a pillow. In going to the 12-inch block, we can think of putting some of our border material around the outside with the square insets at the corner. I think it's fun also to take one block and then kind of meet the challenge of every time you're quilting it, try and quilt it with a different arrangement. It gets boring to quilt the same lines each time. For instance, here in the mountain I've done just a simple cross hatching about 1 inch apart, and then I've used the compass. I found that it's nice to put your fabric marker or fabric pencil in a compass, and then you can simply draw your circles here. And then out here I've done some different rays. I've done the more unusual type for the sky. I like to do the pillow sham backing so that there's a 3-inch overlap at the back. You can see how your fabric has been overlapped in a seam at the back side. In another pillow arrangement, I've gone ahead and done the 6-inch, 4 of them together. In this case, your avocado green and your blue. I went ahead and did the pillow sham on the back also, but put the 2 wrong sides together, that is the insides of your pillow, and then covered it with your decorative, your bias tape on the outside. That way you really have a clean inside of your pillow. You don't have any raw edges, which is kind of a nice way and would certainly be a very lasting way. You could do a pillow in a smaller arrangement. This would be just a 12-inch block. My Amy pieced this one. My daughter pieced that 12-inch Moon Over the Mountain. And this one, you could do a whole purse and have this be one block. You could incorporate your grandmother's fan on one side, your Dresden plate, and then the Moon Over the Mountain on the back. Or of course we could turn to placemats. That's another fun place to use your 12-inch block by simply adding the rectangles. If you took your pattern and cut it out of muslin and then added in the string quilting fashion the different colors of the blue and the greens for the mountain, you can almost frame it and call it your little mini wall hanging. I've even incorporated some of the colors of the rainbow on one side. Now turning to the kitchen, why not go ahead and make your 6-inch block into a whole runner for a table? And I think that's a nice way to accent a small block. I've got the mountains going this way, and then in the middle I've got them turned going in the opposite direction. That same 6-inch block could be taken and put on the bib of an apron. And I went ahead and did put batting in just this front part. I think it gives it nice dimension to have it quilted there. And then the pockets are string quilted, more or less in keeping with the same idea with the mountain. Of course, we can do a tea cozy and use our crazy patch with that idea, and that does work. That keeps your tea nice and warm. Sometimes a new set of china can be the incentive for some placemats, and we'll talk about these in just a few minutes. Also, you can take and do your string quilting again in your 4 different seasons, and I've cut out just the mountain and have done the winter, fall, summer, and spring idea, and this turns into a pull-up. I've done the Roman shade type thing on the back here and simply have slip stitched that on the back, so this could go on a window and more or less be an insulation type thing also, not only for warmth but for decoration also. Now, if you're a school teacher or teach quilting, why not decorate your folder where you keep your ideas and your patterns and your templates in more or less a corrugated file system such as this, and go ahead and make your 6-inch square and decorate the front of your little folder. You could also take, and if you want to decorate a photo album, whether or not it's for your family pictures or whether it's for simply your pictures that you collect for quilting, this is a great way to use your patchwork blocks. Let's go to the sewing machine and refresh our memory on how we put this block together. If you recall, the Moon Over the Mountain is really based on 4 triangles, and once you get your templates cut out, your cloth ready to sew together, I've already sewn 2 together, but let's sew 1 more together so we can kind of remember. I like to think of this curve of going ahead and finding the midpoint here and placing a pin there. That way you know that that's halfway around and that these have got to meet when you come around. So this curve, your concave curve, and then you have your convex curve. Go ahead and do the same thing here. Find the midpoint and simply, I like to pinch it and put a pin there. Now these pins, you want those to meet when they come around. If there's a little bit of offness, you're going to have to do some easing from here to here. And don't panic when you line up these templates and you see the yellow hangs off a little bit. Remember, there's a 1/4 inch seam allowance there, and that's why you've got that excess. But go ahead and make sure and line that up just like that to start sewing. Don't let it hang over and don't let this be back. It's got to be even. And then your curves are going to meet when you come around. Get that all the way here. And then starting out with your 1/4 inch seam allowance, the concave one is going to swing back and stay even with your seam allowance, and this one is going to come this way. You need to kind of just bring it around and just very slowly. If you need to stop, make sure that your needle is down in the machine. Now come around, and I can see I need to pull my bottom one just a little bit. When I get to right where they line up, I like to sneak in there and pull out the pins. But the same thing, keep coming around all the way. Notice that I don't go real fast doing this. I think you've got to just kind of let it go slow. And then when you get to this point, line that all the way up again. See how nicely that will just end. Oh, good. I came right out on target. Now, once that has been done, I think it's nice to go ahead on the 2 outside ones, go ahead and clip that and press those seams back. And then on this one, press these seams in. And when this goes together, pressing will flatten that quite a bit. When these go together, you'll all have an automatic stagger right there. So this would be sewn together, and this will sew together, and you'll have 2 large triangles then to put together. Don't try and sew those and insert your mountain, because then you have that right angle there that makes it rather difficult. But that's the way your Moon Over the Mountain pattern would be sewn together. Now, let's take a look at this marvelous array of tote bags, a great way to use our blocks. These are a lot of my students' works, and they're, of course, very proud and enjoy carrying their tote bags. It seems like when I started making the tote bags originally, I like to line the tote bags, and of course I still line some of them, and if you do that, it's nice if you can even find a lightweight vinyl to put inside. It makes it nice for carrying food and that sort of thing. This is a tote bag that will have a gray and white stripe lining. There's a variation of the King's X, and then there's just a simple square design. So you could have your blocks be the same, or you can vary them for your tote bag. Frances Gardena has left this same gray and black star design, but then look inside. She's had a lot of fun with a burgundy lining. I think that makes it very, very nice and colorful. Today I'm finding that when you're going ahead and layering your 3 layers to quilt your tote bag, why not choose a darker calico and let that be the permanent lining of your tote bag? And of course then when you peek inside, you can see the lovely quilting stitches. So I think that makes it rather nice. Let's look at some examples on this one. I've also had a little pocket that will hang down inside, and I've gone ahead and put a zipper at the top, which really turns it into maybe more of a handbag than just a tote bag. This has the 2 star designs on each side. But keep your colors kind of dark, because the bottom, the mitered border is going to form the bottom of your tote bag, and a lighter color is going to, of course, show dirt. This one has an old-fashioned kind of black and white lining, and almost like a gray look to it, and of course a little tiny tote bag to go inside with a 6-inch Moon Over the Mountain, and how about a mini log cabin. And this one can go inside. I've used a larger border here. The larger you can, even if you start with a 12-inch block, you can vary the size on your tote bag by making these larger. Normally I like to think of about, for a tote bag, about 2.5 by 17 is a good border template to cut out. You could also put Velcro on the inside, and that more or less changes the look of your tote bag, doesn't it? I think Gloria Peterson has done a cute idea here. She's removed the pockets for some old jeans and has made those the pockets for the inside of her tote bag. That's a cute idea with the House on the Hill design. Now, in finishing off the tote bags, I think it's nice to go ahead and once you've got them all, I'm going to turn this inside out so you get a good idea of what happens here. You can go ahead and put the two right sides or the two wrong sides together. Baste them together. If you want to finish, this is these Moon Over the Mountain and the sailboat. I've put the right sides together knowing that I'm going to trim it off and sew it together and have the bias tape covering the raw edges on the inside. Now perhaps you'd want this bias tape to be an accent color on the outside of your tote bag, in which case you'd put the insides together and then finish it off, and this would be the outside accent. Why not, when you're doing that, basting your tote bag together, go ahead and put your bias, remember we learned how to make the continuous bias tape, just go ahead and insert that in the basting so that when you machine stitch this, you're getting all of it at the same time. Once that has been sewn, then I would simply come and turn that over and finish that off by hand. And of course the final thing, you're going to need to form the bottom of your bag, but I wouldn't do that until your handwork is done. And then either by hand or on the machine, sew across. So you are going to have a kind of a triangle that will rest in the bottom of your bag. But you need that to form the bottom. That's going to give your body, that's going to make it stand up when you get everything inside it. Now, another idea for a little tote bag to go inside, you could eliminate, if you wanted to, you could just forget about the bias tape and sew all of the layers together except one backing, and then you could simply pretend that has been machine sewn, then simply turn that under 1/4 inch and let that fall over. That would be another idea also. I've used the Super Loft batting in this, so it has a real kind of poochy look to it, doesn't it? I think it's nice to continue that look in your handles, and I want to show you how to make those handles to go on the tote bag. I also use these handles on the album covers, and I think we'll have a chance to see exactly how that works. You'll need to cut some fabric that is on the bias. I think that's important because anytime it has a curve to it, you want it to have give. So cut your fabric and fold it in half. Now before you do that, you're going to put the right sides together. Remember that selvage material that we cut off? It's good and strong and you don't want to throw it away. So put it in the middle and then fold that over and go ahead and pin that on the fold because you don't want it to, you're going to machine stitch this in just a minute and you don't want to catch that, but you want to make sure that it hangs out from one end. Then decide how poochy you want your little handle and cut your batting. It could be a double layer or you could even triple it, but fold that in half and lay that flat, and then this is going to go right on top of that. Now I'm going to machine sew this all the way down, and I'm going to start out here to up here to right angle and catch that material, that's that little end here. You could also use a shoestring if you wanted to here, but you want to use something that does not have give, that's going to be taut. All right, I come in here. Now I think a good stitch to use on this, I'm going to start at the end. A good stitch to use would be your lock knit stitch, and just about all the machines have that today. It really makes it nice because this is on the bias and will have give then. Some girls even will double their fabric here because this does get a lot of pull, and you could have a double layer of fabric. If you don't have that lock knit stitch, you might try using even a zigzag stitch. Just a very fine zigzag stitch would do the same idea. But you come all the way down to the end, and see what you're doing is you're anchoring the batting in at the same time. We used to have to try and pull that batting in separately. Well, we've tried everything here. We tried nylon hose one time, and quite often you can buy the upholstering cording that comes very large, and that works nicely also. But this seemed to be the ticket. I found this works easier than anything else. For your tote bag handle, you need to measure. I would say it should be about 16 to 18 inches long. But I would make a sample and then just try it, and then maybe, because you want to be able to put your tote bag. I know it's nice. I find that if you're out shopping, you want to be able to put your tote bag all the way up on your shoulder, such as that. So you want to kind of test it and measure how long you want it. This particular one is going to be for our photo album. Or remove your pins, and then on one end you can trim that off a little bit, but not on this end. Leave this hanging, and then have to kind of lick your fingers there to get this started. But then you just simply take this and just pull it, and you'll find that it just inverts so nicely, and what's happening is that's coming out and your batting is caught all the way down. And you get this nice little tube that is already very strong because you use that stitch, and there you go. This is what would be going on the photo album. Now, for instance here, you want to cover a photo album, and it's fun to use two different blocks, or you could use them the same. I've used the Formal Garden and then the sewing machine block on this side. And what is going to happen here is once they are sewn together, you need to have a book, first of all, that will bend back. This is kind of a rickety one, and so we need to cover this one, don't we? But what you're going to do is, I'm going to slide this out just a minute. Once you've quilted your blocks, and I think quilting does give it strength, you're going to lay this grosgrain ribbon here, and that, remember, we've made this cord, and I'm going to measure this and make sure it's the same length as the other one. This is going to be what I'm going to use to hold my cord. And it's going to need to be strong because it's going to be lifting the photo album. Okay, this will be attached down here and sew it to the grosgrain ribbon. Okay, so I know that it's not getting all the pull just from the patchwork, that I'm going to go ahead and machine stitch this and hold that nice and taut there. Then this will be sewn onto this, and you could even go ahead and put a pocket on one side if you wanted to hold extra pictures in. Then I would go back to my bias tape and simply sew this all the way around, and you'll have to do some handwork on the outside there. But then this album will simply slide in here, and you're going to have a nice cover. This one would slide in once it's been sewn, and of course it'll go all the way back and slide in here also. But that makes a nice photo album cover and would also make a nice gift, I believe. Placemats make another nice gift. Becky Needley gave me the idea of using two blocks, more or less a white-on-white look, and presenting these as wedding gifts. I think that would be a good idea, and quite often you don't like to use only rectangular shaped placemats. What if you've got a round or an oval table? You can go ahead when you're sewing them and simply draw a triangle on the back side, and that way you'll cut that off and you've got an octagon shaped placemat. I think that's a nice idea. For the coffee cup placemat, remember that you're going to go ahead and piece your 12-inch block, but then you have to add sides to it. I would probably make that about 4 inches wide. You could measure and make sure you're happy with that size. Once that has been done, then you're going to either baste or pin your batting and the back of your placemat together. Then I like to simply place the two right sides together and sew all the way around, 4 sides, including the corners, and leave an opening, say about 4 inches, to turn that inside out. And before you turn it inside out, trim off any excess. And then, of course, the first thing you're going to do is baste all the way around the outside and quilt all the way around the outside too. You've got to whip stitch that opening closed. That's important. Might be fun here to quilt this in ecru or off-white, and then maybe some brown stitching for the steam coming out of the coffee would be nice. Let's also remember about our pillows. We made a lot of bias tape using this wide black material, and of course I like the fullness of 1.5 around the outside of your pillow. Twice the all the way around would make it a very full pillow, wouldn't it? A full ruffle. But I think 1.5 is fine. Once I have made my bias and folded it in half, I like to put pins in quarter sections, knowing that each quarter section I'm going to gather and then pin to the corner. And I like to use that method of extending the top thread on your sewing machine and zigzagging right on top of that. See how you can just then gently pull that. And I've got the pin here and I've got it pinned here, and of course I'd have to do each section, but then this ruffle would fall to the inside and I would machine stitch this, and you can more or less get the idea of how this is going to look when it's all done. This is my black and white period to go with my black and white quilt. Won't that be really jazzy? Another thing you could look at and remember is eyelet ruffles are lovely on pillows also. You could turn to either your star flower idea or a version of your King's X. And this same idea, take your eyelet ruffle and gather it in quarter sections and let the good part fall in. I think it's really important to make sure you pin those corners so you don't get any overlapping. And I went ahead and put the sham backing on the back side here with about a 3-inch overlap. Joey Hornsby has done a marvelous job of the more or less a different version of Moon Over the Mountain, because she has turned to applique. And I think she's done a very nice job of overlapping the suggestion and the ideas of her mountains. And she likes to combine batik. I'd never heard of combining batik and some of the calicos. And of course she's inserted a red sun or a moon. And here's another example of how she works. She does work on a foundation piece of material and then simply slip stitches and builds her mountain that way. For her little sun or her moon, she has sewn the two right sides together and then turned it inside out, and then she will simply sew that closed. You could go ahead and sew a complete circle, put a slit in the back of the material and turn it inside out that way. Or you could even do, for a round circle that might be going on a Dresden plate center, you could cut out a perfect circle in your paper and then do the English method treatment of just taking a piece of material and folding it over that and basting it so you've got a perfect round piece, and then you would pull out the paper after you'd pressed it. So those are just ideas for making a round circle. Betty Turner has done a wonderful combination of applique and piecework. I'd like to show it to you a little bit closer. Betty Turner is from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and is a member of the Forsyth Piecers and Quilters Club. And I like what she has done here. She has combined a larger size block, a 16-inch square, with applique and has alternated these for an overall sampler appearance. She's worked with the browns and the golds, and I especially like the way her butterflies kind of float off into the border. I think that's kind of a nice idea. I've had a chance to sneak some quilting out of Alice Wortman's sewing room. She's probably home right now working on the rest of this quilt, but I just admired the applique look that she has achieved here. We had a chance to really work on applique in an earlier show, and we aren't going to get into it on this show, but it does receive such a beautiful kind of a soft look in the work that she has done here. This will be panel lap quilting, so this will be one whole row that will be attached to another row. When I look at this, I'm reminded of the flag that I made when I took to Baltimore this year and more or less presented it to the mayor's office. I learned something this year about applique, and that is that there are some instances where you will be appliquing a lighter material on a dark background. I wanted to take them a calico patchwork flag of the state of Maryland, and what I had to do after that white was appliqued on the dark, I had to actually go back and on the underneath side cut away some of that dark material. And I was reminded of that from the Hawaiian applique quilts. When they do their elaborate work, it's hard to imagine that what they end up with is one continuous piece of fabric with the back material. For instance, this white material would be removed from the back of this little calico flower. So that would be really more work, but it would be quite an unusual feat to do on the Hawaiian type quilting. We have not completed our show because we have not shown you the Moon Over the Mountain on a vest. And this is something that we're going to work on. I think it's great to think that we can take our patchwork patterns and turn them into clothing to go on our back. Doesn't it make sense that the fact that we take 3 layers and we insulate it, that then we can go ahead and make vests and jackets? When we stop to think that some of the earlier forms of quilting were padded material that went under armor and shields in order to soften and protect your body. So I think this is great to think that we can take patchwork and incorporate it in vest. I have done some more applique here on the front of this one. I simply really freehand drew some stars on some bright pink material and then appliqued that. So here's another form of combining applique with your piecework. This, of course, is your larger 12-inch moon over the mountain, and this was your 6-inch moon over the mountain with more or less a log cabin treatment, wasn't? This reminds us of more or less the courthouse or the Capitol steps, because we've added bands on each side of the 6-inch square. And then to highlight that, I've done some piecework around the outside working with triangles. But this is the sort of thing we're going to do next show. I think it makes a real nice statement to say that we can walk around with our quilts on our backs. This one has a bright lining. See you next time. Thank you for watching.
Georgia Bonesteel is the author of the book Lap Quilting with Georgia Bonesteel, based on this television series.